Hello and welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. I'm Harriet Frew, here to support you in finding peace with food and overcoming eating disorders and disordered eating. So thank you so much for being here today. Now today I want to talk all about ADHD and eating disorders, giving my 11 insights from the therapy room. And I'm talking about this today because I'm finding that more and more of my clients coming into therapy are neurodiverse. Many of them have a diagnosis of ADHD, and I think this is profoundly impactful on relationship with food. So I'm going to talk through some different things. Hopefully this will give you something perhaps that you're not getting in other places. I'm talking much more from my anecdotal experience and what I'm really seeing showing up in the therapy room. So I hope you find it relatable. If you want to add anything though, or if there's something you don't agree with, just do let me know, because I'm always learning. I feel like I'm quite new to really understanding ADHD and eating disorders. Okay, so let's dive in. So number one, increased vulnerability. So today, so many of my clients are entering the therapy room with a diagnosis or self-diagnosis of ADHD, and they have often only recently realized the humungous impact on their lifetime relationship with food. So I think as well, sometimes this can bring a lot of grief, a lot of sadness really, when one reflects and looks back on life and realizes, oh my goodness, I've just really had all these struggles, and it can be really, really hard just to kind of sit with that and to come to terms with it. So if you have ADHD, you have increased vulnerability to suffering from an eating disorder, so particularly bulimia, nervosa, or binge eating disorder. And this is backed up by research, finding that people with ADHD are 4 times more likely to have an eating disorder than those without. And ADHD absolutely adds a layer of complexity in navigating your food relationship, when this is already hugely challenging, I think, for most of us in this diet-obsessed world that we live in. But if you have ADHD and you're listening, you have ADHD and an eating disorder, please show yourself deep understanding and compassion for your food struggles, because you are dealing with, a lot. Just really want to validate that. So number 2, the dopamine reward. With ADHD, you have lower baseline levels of dopamine, the neurotransmitter linked to pleasure and reward. So this means you get a heightened reward response from any activity that stimulates dopamine elevation. So it can be food, compulsive exercise, drugs, gambling, phone scrolling, shopping, or alcohol as examples. Now, thankfully, I guess dopamine can also be raised by more health-promoting activities such as eating well, moving your body, and getting enough sleep. But human beings, we are vulnerable to the quick fix reward of the less healthy routes. Of course we are, we all are. So the dopamine response, it feels amplified, it feels intense, you naturally want more. And in relation to food, you may then crave and then binge eat on sugary and processed foods, which offer this elevated reward and feel quite addictive. So you get that really heightened dopamine response. Number 3, separating out the eating disorder symptoms from ADHD ones. Now, as a therapist, I recognise that it's sometimes difficult to untangle ADHD and eating disorder symptoms. Where does one condition end and the other begin? The interplay is complex. Now, I know myself, as a previous bulimia sufferer, I would have described myself as a food addict, impulsive, constantly craving sugar, obsessed with food details, and viewing the world through a very black and white lens. Now, these are all symptoms associated with ADHD and relationship with food, but I am neurotypical. I guess, though, what my anecdotal experience from the therapy room leans towards is the recognition that you will experience these eating disorder symptoms on an even more magnified level if you have ADHD. Now, I know myself from being neurotypical and having bulimia, just how intense all those symptoms were. So if you have ADHD as well on top of that, I think you are really getting that amplified response. So important to have compassion for yourself. Number 4, I love this food and then I hate it. So you may find that you struggle with making food decisions and it feels overwhelming and perplexing to choose. And your food sensitivities may leave you baffled with eating choices, whether it be hot or cold or spicy or sour or crunchy, or trying to construct a perfectly balanced meal so you get all those different flavors. Then one day, you find a meal that you passionately adore for its exacting balance of sour and crunch, foods combined in a wondrous joyful mix, and you eat this meal continuously for several weeks. I've seen this with many of my clients. And then next, quite out of the blue, it becomes the most repulsive food that you could ever taste or look at without feeling queasy. And you have no explanation or understanding about this. Now, I don't know if this is true for everyone with ADHD, but I've definitely experienced it with several of my clients in the therapy room. Number 5, stimulation and variety. So you need stimulation and lots of it. Life is a rich tapestry of interests and diversions with multicolored projects to excite and entice. So when bored or procrastinating your to-do list, you drift towards dopamine-stimulating activities, and this can include eating. Number 6, rabbit holes. When you get deeply absorbed in an activity, you feel possessed with fascination and hyper-attention, and you may lose all hunger signals and attention towards food whilst laser focused on the matter in hand, and you temporarily forget all about food. But then you emerge from the rabbit hole hours later, starving and over-hungry, and you're then vulnerable to binge eating or overeating on catch-up with no time to consider food preparation or planning. Number 7, body image and food preoccupation. So the rabbit hole can be a blessing and a curse. You become hyperfixated on topics that excite and stimulate you, and this can be immensely rewarding and joyful to experience. But it can be hugely detrimental. If the focus becomes MyFitnessPal or the number on the weighing scales, this can add rocket fuel to an already burning fire of self-worth over-evaluation in relation to weight and shape. Not so great. Number 8, black and white thinking. With ADHD, polarized thinking can dominate, and you place extremely high expectations on yourself and chastise yourself harshly when standards go unmet. So you can be intensely self-critical, and this can trigger a shame spiral with feelings of inadequacy and incompetence. And sometimes you abandon projects due to the overwhelming pressure you exert on yourself, and you then feel guilty and ashamed for doing this. And food can become a self-medicating soother and escape when these feelings are intense and overwhelming. Number 9, disconnection from the body. You may feel some disconnection from your body and be out of touch with hunger and fullness signals. Therefore, it's not easy to eat intuitively, and you may rely helpfully and unhelpfully on an external plan that directs your eating. So the plan can provide a much needed structure and scaffolding, but if too restrictive, it can also exacerbate binge eating and overeating. Number 10, wrapped up in bliss. The ADHD brain is constantly chattering and offering up a zillion different thoughts and perspectives, and it's rare to achieve respite from this. And you may find yourself combining mindless eating with a favorite TV show or YouTube channel, giving a perfect temporary escape and alleviation from the noise. So you're temporarily wrapped up in bliss and escaping the treadmill of life until you emerge and feel guilty and ashamed for overeating. So it can be extremely challenging to find peace in your mind. So number 11, what helps with managing ADHD and eating disorders? So firstly, it's hugely important to show yourself deep kindness and compassion in navigating ADHD and eating. And it's vital to acknowledge the unique challenges you face and to approach the subject with non-judgment and non-shaming attitudes. Self-caring eating can be hugely beneficial. So this includes creating an eating plan, eating regularly, and knowing the times and types of foods you might eat. So it doesn't have to be rigid, but it can provide a safe scaffolding to support blood sugar stabilization and being nourished. And you may need to set prompts and alarms to remind yourself of when to eat, to help keep yourself on track when the inevitable rabbit holes of life seduce you in. And you may need to plan in breaks to pause and check in with yourself, because it's easy to become disconnected and to become hyperfixated and neglect self-care. The ADHD brain needs stimulation and variety, so honour this as much as possible and optimise your day with varied tasks. And notice when boredom sets in and honour your stimulation need with non-food incentives. and this may be very personal to you. You might have to experiment with different things. Take care of yourself as well around dopamine stimulating triggers such as iPhones, caffeine, sugar, or other shiny objects. Don't deprive yourself, but be intentional with use. So cognitive behavior therapy can be beneficial for ADHD and eating. And for some people, medication that promotes impulse control and boosts executive function can also be beneficial. But you can discuss this with your medical team. So I hope you found this helpful. Do you have ADHD and an eating disorder or disordered eating? And are there things that you would add to what I've talked about? I'd love to hear your experiences. Do get in touch. Okay, thank you so much for listening to this episode today. And I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.